This story follows a guy named Jess, a teenager who ends up falling for his own friend's mother, and eventually things between them turn romantic. The movie begins with a man named Adrian, a high school science teacher. One evening, he's sitting at home grading student assignments, while Emma works beside him, going through papers of her own. After a while, Emma looks over at him and asks why he's giving so many students such terrible grades. Adrian barely looks up before saying the kids didn't write anything worth rewarding. Then he reaches Jess's assignment. In it, Jess writes about wanting to spend more time at a student named Brandon's house. One day, he finally gets the chance by offering to help Brandon with math, but the moment he walks inside, his attention locks onto Brandon's mother, Stella. She's beautiful, but there's something else in her eyes too. A quiet restlessness, like she's constantly noticing things nobody else sees. A little later, Brandon takes Jess downstairs to work on a math problem. The house feels calm on the surface, but underneath it, there's tension hiding in places nobody talks about. Meanwhile, Stella sits nearby, flipping through a magazine. Jess keeps glancing at her over and over before finally heading back home. Later, he tells Brandon his grades are terrible, and if he wants to improve, Jess will have to come over every day to tutor him. After reading all this, Adrian tells Emma that Jess has incredible writing talent, the kind that could turn him into a serious writer someday. The next day after class, Adrian asks Jess about the assignment and warns him carefully. If Brandon ever finds out what Jess really thinks about his mum, things could get ugly fast. But instead of looking nervous, Jess almost seems confident, calm even. Jess brushes it off and says he only wrote it that way to make the story more interesting. Then, he hands Adrian the next part of the assignment. Later, Adrian goes to Emma and tells her everything. Together, they continue reading. This time, Jess writes that when he returns to Brandon's house, Stella seems much happier because Brandon has been improving in math. But as she walks away, Jess starts staring at her in a way that feels completely wrong. Even Emma feels uncomfortable reading it. She can't understand how a kid could think this way. And slowly, both of them begin realizing the story is drifting somewhere dark. The next day at school, Adrian looks into Brandon's family records and learns they moved there about 2 years ago. Since then, they've changed houses several times. That's when Adrian starts thinking Jess might actually be troubled, maybe even lost. He convinces himself the kid just needs proper guidance. So Adrian decides he's going to help turn Jess into a real writer. Later, Jess hands him another assignment. In it, Jess writes about going back to Brandon's house again. Brandon's father is sitting in the living room watching a game when Stella walks in and sits beside them. But Jess barely notices anyone else in the room anymore. His eyes stay fixed on Stella, completely locked in. A few minutes later, Brandon's dad gets an urgent phone call and leaves the room. And the second he's gone, Jess starts thinking something dangerous. If the distance between Stella and her husband keeps growing, maybe one day he could have her all to himself. When Adrian reads this part to Emma, even she admits Jess's writing is unbelievably good. Then the next day at school, Jess hands Adrian another assignment. And by now, Adrian is so pulled into the story that the line between right and wrong is starting to blur. When Adrian gets home, he starts reading Jess's latest assignment with Emma. This time, Jess writes that he purposely gives Brandon an extremely difficult math problem to keep him busy upstairs. Then he quietly heads downstairs just to see Stella. That's when he notices Brandon's parents arguing with each other. And strangely, watching them fight makes him happy. A few moments later, Stella walks out and catches Jess standing there. But before she can say anything, he quickly pretends to study a painting hanging nearby. Still, the look in Stella's eyes says everything. She already knows he's been listening. That night, Stella tells Brandon they may need to find someone else to tutor him in math. Jess secretly overhears the entire conversation and panic immediately starts setting in. Because if Brandon's grades drop again, he'll lose the only excuse he has to keep coming back to that house. After obsessing over it for hours, Jess finally comes up with an idea. The next day, he asks Adrian to steal the upcoming math test, and then he gives him an ultimatum. If Adrian refuses, he'll stop writing completely. Now Adrian finds himself trapped between Jess's incredible talent and the disturbing darkness growing inside him. At first, Adrian is deeply uncomfortable with the idea, but he's become so invested in Jess's future as a writer that eventually he gives in. He steals the math exam and secretly hands it over to Jess. Then test day arrives, and sitting there in class, Jess wears a smile that feels almost unsettling, like he already knows he's getting exactly what he wants. When the test results come back, Brandon scores surprisingly high. His parents are thrilled, and just like that, Jess is allowed to continue tutoring him. Not long after, Brandon's dad invites Jess to come watch a football game together, but Jess immediately turns him down, because if Brandon and his dad leave the house, Stella will be alone, and that's exactly what he wants. The next day, Brandon heads out to play with his friends. Jess shows up at the house while Stella is there by herself. When she asks why he came over, he casually tells her he forgot his math book. His voice sounds innocent, but his intentions are anything but. Stella starts helping him look for the book, but after searching around, she realizes there never was a book to begin with. Then just notices her earrings and quietly tells her his mother used to own a pair just like them before she passed away. The second Stella hears that, her expression softens. Soon, the two of them are sitting together, having drinks and talking. After hearing this part of the story, Emma turns to Adrian and says says that if Brandon's father ever finds out what's happening, he'll kill Jess. But Adrian brushes it off and insists nothing like that is going to happen. Later that night, Adrian reads another assignment from Jess. This time, Jess writes that he ended up staying at Brandon's house very late. And little by little, this relationship is starting to cross a line that may be impossible to come back from. At this point, Jess starts realizing his feelings for Stella are becoming uncontrollable. Meanwhile, when Jess goes to visit Luke, the boy suddenly tells him that he's his best friend and then unexpectedly kisses him. That's when we realize Ryan has feelings for Jess too. The whole situation becomes even more complicated. Later, Jess quietly sneaks into Ryan's mother's bedroom and just stands there watching her sleep in silence. After reading this, Emma feels genuinely disturbed, but Adrian keeps defending Jess, saying there's nothing unusual about it. According to him, kids Jess's age go through confusing phases all the time, but by now, Jess is getting closer and closer to Stella. He's completely chasing his emotions now, and he stopped being afraid of the consequences. One night, another huge argument breaks out between Brandon's parents. The fight keeps escalating until both of them storm out of the house angry. That's when Jess shows up. Before leaving, he hands Stella a letter. The next day, after reading it, Stella calls Jess over to see her. While they sit there talking, Jess can't stop imagining her in his mind. And strangely enough, Stella is deeply moved by the letter too. Then suddenly, she leans in and starts kissing him. But what neither of them realizes is that Brandon has been secretly watching the entire thing. And from that moment on, everything changes. Then, at the very end of Claude's assignment, one final line is written. The story isn't over yet. The second Adrian reads that, he freezes. He's so shaken, but he can't even bring himself to tell Emma about it. The next day at school, Adrian immediately asks about Brandon. That's when he finds out Brandon never showed up to class. Instantly, Adrian starts panicking. He asks another teacher to call Brandon's house, and after a few tense moments, they finally get an answer. Brandon is homesick, which is why he missed school. Hearing that gives Adrian a little relief, but deep down, the fear inside him keeps growing stronger. He can already feel everything starting to fall apart. Later, Adrian asks Claude why he wrote something so disturbing in the assignment. Claude calmly explains that he only did it to make the story more intense. But now, Adrian can't stop thinking about Brandon. If Brandon ever fully learns the truth, maybe he'll completely break down. Maybe he'll do something irreversible. So Adrian finally tells Claude to stop writing these stories on together, but Claude refuses. He says he can't stop anymore. After hearing that, Adrian looks at him and says that from now on, he's done reading his stories. Without saying another word, Claude tosses his newest assignment into a trash can and walks away. But a little later, Adrian gives in to his curiosity again. He quietly pulls the pages back out and starts reading. This time, Claude writes that Brandon's father comes home exhausted and depressed because of problems at work. Then Stella walks over and tells him there's going to be a new guest joining the family. The atmosphere inside the house suddenly feels happy on the surface, while underneath it, relationships are quietly falling apart. The moment Brandon's father hears the news, he's overwhelmed with happiness. But then Brandon walks in and suddenly tells his parents that Claude won't be tutoring him anymore and they should find another tutor instead. After reading this, Adrian goes to Claude and tells him he needs to stop going to Brandon's house completely. This time, Claude agrees. He tells Adrian he won't go back there again. Then Claude explains what happened earlier that day. He says he and Brandon got into a fight because Brandon finally realized how close Claude and his mother had become. And for the first time, Claude starts understanding that his story is hurting real people. Later, we see Claude go to Stella one last time, hoping to finish the story his own way. But Stella hands his letter back to him. Claude tells her they can row away somewhere together, far from everything, but Stella gently refuses. She tells him he's far too young for her. Hearing that completely crushes him, and he breaks down crying. Afterward, Claude goes to Adrian's house. Emma answers the door and tells him Adrian isn't home right now. But Claude calmly replies, I know he's not home. That she starts tried to look for the world. Then we see Adrian getting fired from the school. When Adrian finally returns home, Emma hands him Claude's newest assignment. As he reads it, Adrian realizes Claude came to the house for a reason. In the story, Claude reveals that Adrian lied to Emma about something deeply personal in order to hide his own shortcomings. And that lie is the real reason they were never able to have children. After learning the truth, Emma becomes furious with Adrian, and slowly, Claude starts getting closer to her too. Now Adrian's entire life is collapsing around him, and for the first time, he feels completely alone. After reading all of it, Adrian completely loses his temper and starts arguing with Emma. Then the movie reaches its final scene. We see Adrian and Claude sitting together, talking calmly. Adrian looks at him and says, I can't believe I'm sitting here having a peaceful conversation with the same kid who cost me my job and took my wife away from me. For a moment, neither of them says anything else, but the silence between them says more than words ever could. Then Claude slowly smiles. And that's where the movie ends. And if you're into dark, mind-bending stories like this one, make sure you hit subscribe to HOPKART PARU right now. Because the stories here don't end when the video does, they stay in your head long after it's over.